Good morning and welcome back to another YouTube video. You may notice there's another Z behind me. That's not mine, that's actually a customer car. A little bit different of a video today. We're gonna be doing an air ride install on this guy's Z. Okay, with the car up on jack stands and the wheels off, it's time to remove the struts, or in this case, the coilovers. So let's get those off right now. All right, the coilovers are out. Time to get the new air ride struts in. So the kit we're installing today is from Airtekk. I just have to say, if you're a company and you're giving out free stuff, socks, this definitely has to be the coolest bit of swag I've ever seen a company give you. Love it. Before we install the air strut itself, first we got to set ride height. Max low is the only answer here. And we have to install the airline fittings. This is going to be much easier to install here on the bench as opposed to on the car itself. So let's get that on. Got our air fitting attached to the strut. Now we're ready to toss this thing on the car. Strut is in. May seem obvious, but the air fitting is on the back of the strut and it is facing rearward of the car because that's the direction that the airlines are going to be running. Another quick shout out to this company Airtekk for providing new hardware. These are the rear struts, and a lot of the factory strut actually comes with a nut like welded to the strut. So it's nice that they would think, oh hey, they're going to need a new one. And these are nice nylon lined nuts. Always nice when a company gives you hardware. So we got the rear one in here. This one required a bit more thinking because you'll see up there is the airline. You had to position the fitting right, get that hole drilled right, because now it pops out right through here. Now we've got to do the same thing to that side. Well, I haven't been filming a whole lot because I'm just not having a good time.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
But we're getting the airlines ran. It's taken a whole lot longer than it should. But on the inside here, I've got them all labeled. So these are going to a manual gauge. This is going to one of the manual switches. And then I need one more line ran for the other switch. And then we can start running electrical. Well, that took way too long, but I got some switches in. Check that out. Looks all right. These two are for the gauge. I'll wait for that in a bit. And the last airline is back here in the trunk. This one hiding down here. This one's gonna go to the tank. So now I just have to put some of this trunk back together, get the tank in here and the compressor and start figuring out how I wanna lay that out. With the airlines ran and the switches in, we can now turn our attention to the electrical side of things, which is pretty simple on this setup, thankfully. First, we're gonna start with running a big power wire from the positive terminal. And I'm gonna snake this guy through this rubber connector here, and that will bring it inside. So let's get working on that. Got a little pro tip for you if you're ever soldering ends onto a cable like this. Let me show you how to do it. All right, so I've got the cable end in a vise. Just gonna heat it up. Now I'm just melting solder into it. Good amount of solder. I'm gonna take my wire, dunk it right in. Give that a minute to dry. I'll have to clean up the little mess I made, and then I've got heat shrink on there, but it should be a nice solid connection. Now the reason for that connection that I put on is for this big fuse here. This came with the kit. Anytime you're running a power wire that big through your car, or really any power wire straight off the battery, whether it's for an amp or in this case the compressor for the air ride, you definitely want to fuse that. You don't want your car burning to the ground. Now this may seem obvious, but I'm not gonna hook this up to the battery while I'm fishing this cable through the car. Don't want it to ground out on something and start a fire or short anything out. So we're gonna leave it disconnected until the wire's ran to where it needs to be. All right, well, I was really hoping to get the wiring done tonight so I could air this thing up and leave it aired up overnight to make sure there was no leaks. But unfortunately, the kit is missing a few connectors and things, and I just don't have the right size connectors to make it work. And it's 9 p.m., so no place is open to go get those. So just gonna leave it as it is for tonight. Got pretty much everything done other than the last bit of wiring. As you can see over here, it's kind of dark. Everything's in here. The lines are ran. Everything's the way it should, except for the wiring, just because I'm missing a few things. And obviously I have to put the whole trunk back together, but I was hoping to to check everything and make sure it worked before I put the trunk back together and made like a nice little false floor setup thing. But all that's gonna have to wait till tomorrow. So I'll catch you guys then.
The next day.
Good morning. We are back to working on the air install on this Z. Day 2 of a one-day job. Let me show you what we have left. So we are working on the wiring now. Really, there's not a whole lot left to do. It's just wiring in this relay, this pressure switch to tell the relay when to kick the compressor on. So I really just need a key on 12-volt power for this switch. And then I've already got the power and grounds ran for the big relay. So really in the next maybe hour or so, I'm hoping to get the system up and running so I can test for leaks and then start buttoning this job up. Okay, the wiring is all in. I just hooked up the positive cable there. Now let's go hit the key and see if this compressor turns on. The moment of truth. Everything's still kind of torn apart. Got the gauge just laying in there. That's a good sign. Okay, so I'm letting the compressor run for maybe about 8 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. And I'm like, man, why isn't this thing building pressure? What's going on? I start going around the car with a little squirt bottle, checking for leaks. I'm like, man, I have to be missing something. This just makes no sense. Sure enough, the bottom of the tank, there is a fitting missing there. Forgot to put a plug in. Smart. Well, after fixing that leak and letting the compressor run for a long time, I think we are finally getting somewhere. So if that's airing out. And then if I air up, watch the gauge. Oh, look at that, we're building pressure. Building pressure. It's still super slow because I think the tank only has like 20 or 30 PSI in it. I've got to let it get up to 200 and then we'll check back then. Okay, so the bags have been holding PSI all day and I just finished the trunk setup. Take a look at what we got. Pretty basic. So the trick with this is there is a piece of wood underneath here that this is all bolted to. So it's nice and secure, nothing moves. You can see a little bit of wiring hiding back there, but overall looks good. Still got a little bit of trunk space there. The customer is gonna put a sub and stuff back here. Otherwise I would have pushed the tank a lot further back, but looks pretty good. Time to get this thing off the ground and finally take a look at it aired out. So the air ride install is done. Customer has the car, he's happy, everything works the way it should, but it definitely wasn't without its issues. The last clip I filmed showing off the trunk setup and stuff, I thought that was pretty much it. I put the car back on the ground, pulled it out of the garage, went to air it out, and instead of airing out the bags, when you hit the switches, it aired out the tank. So it released all the air in the tank and not the bags. The car stayed aired up. I was really confused. When you go to air it up, because the tank was empty, then the car would air out. It just didn't make any sense, and I wasn't really familiar with air ride setups using manual switches. Everything I'd done before used a manifold and like a controller and stuff. So I didn't really know what to do, and at that point, it was pretty late at night. The customer, who's a friend of mine, came by, took a look at it, tossed around a bunch of ideas, and really didn't come up with anything. So fast forward to today, he reached out to the company Airtekk. They told him right away, oh, you probably have the switches installed backwards, which I didn't even think was possible. I guess in my head, I think a switch works the same both ways, but I found out there's a one-way valve in the switch. So obviously you have it backwards, it's going to drain the tank. You have it forward, it's going to use the tank to fill the bags and drain the bags. Now I know, lesson learned. That was kind of a lot of stress and just a real brain twister there, trying to figure out what was going wrong. But at the end of it all, it is done. The job's done, the car looks good. I got a little clip of it airing up and airing out right before he left today. So he is happy with it, I'm happy with it, and I'm really happy that it's done. Anyways, check out the clips of this thing airing up and down.